Well, what do you think? Mike's coming or?
I did 30 some years. I am.
I thought
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's my last term, so.
Yeah. Well, it's 6 o'clock, and so we will call the July meeting of the Sheriff County Board to order. And we'll start with roll call. And Supervisor Bonfiglio has been excused. He had a thing for guards tonight, so. Okay. All right, very good. All right, so let's rush. Okay,
Who's?
they're all up there.
It's there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Okay,
Oh,
I'll check it in a minute.
okay, so let's rise for the silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. Here's Mike. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Who was that? Oh, okay, Mr. Bossard, and second by Mr. Wadle. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, approval of the minutes of the June 21st, 2022 monthly meeting and the public hearing on withdrawal from the East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. Eckstein, second by Mr. Peterson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, public comments. I don't believe we had any. Unfinished business, there's none. Okay, we'll move into new business. Reports, we'll start out with the building project update, and we'll start out with Kurt with the Samuels Group, and we have Jeff Belangia here too to help assist in some of our decision making here. I have one of those.
I did one.
Mm,
I think he took
No, I took yours.
it. You took mine.
See. He's got this. Yeah.
I can remember this.
There he is.
Yes, he's laughing at my tablet.
Coming.
Good evening, everyone. Thing on? Not on. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. So I gave you a sheet. Let's do something all together. Let's look at the bottom right-hand corner. See the additional borrowing of 27 million. Take a gasp, and then we'll talk about that. So that's kind of the intent of tonight's meeting. So give you a little bit of history of what's happened over the course of the last month since we've met. So we received bids for Poisippi and the highway shop on the 7th of July, one on the 12th of July. We met with Building and Grounds this week on the 18th, and we went over those bids. I actually think the bid tabulation for those two projects is in your packet. I don't plan to go through those in detail tonight. If you have questions about them, I can definitely address them. My goal tonight is to talk big picture about the master plan of where we currently sit, budget and progress wise. That's really what I want to focus on today. We're not asking you to take any action tonight. What this is to inform you, to prepare you to take action a month from now, in the month of August. Whether you decide to borrow more money, whether you decide not to borrow more money, how we prioritize the projects, That's what will be before you for a decision a month from now. My goal today is to give you where we are currently with projects that have been bid out, where we are currently with projected updated budgets for projects that were in the original master plan, and then some dates and some deadlines that we need to align with based on the bids and the deadlines that we have for while those bids need to be honored by the contractors. So I have brought Jeff along. Jeff's information is probably more important than mine because it's going to talk to you about what the borrowing would cost if you would do it. And I'll have him follow up with after I'm done doing my update here. So I've done my best to try to make this as simple as possible. If I oversimplified it, and if any of you would like to meet with me one-on-one between now and the next board meeting, I would encourage that, because if you have questions about any of this, I want to be able to give you the information that you would like before the meeting. So the first page, what I intended to do was to give you a column where it says original budget. That's how we got to the $63 million when we approved the master plan budget at the beginning of this process. The Government Center, Poisippi, EMS, EOC, Sheriff's Evidence. I actually put Government Center, Poisippi, and the Watoma EMS at the top of the list on purpose because those were the highest priorities that we had talked about. The rest of those projects that were in there, I would say that they kind of arm wrestle over who's next in line. And that's really a discussion about how do we prioritize them, right? The next column that I have there that says current with contingencies, the items that I put in yellow, those are numbers that have been bid. Now, I don't have them down to the exact dollar. I've rounded them off for purposes here. They're right in that ballpark. So that's why they're round numbers. All the bids don't come in with perfect round numbers, but they give you an idea of where we are. You'll see that I have them with a contingency. Every one of the projects, we have a construction contingency in the budget. So the next column that's there tells you the contingency that's carried in the previous column. So $51,100,000, we've carried $1 million contingency. So the allocated funds or the dollars that are earmarked already for contracts and fees is $50,100,000. Now I put the contingency in there for a reason because I want you to understand that those are funds that have not been spent yet, but they will be spent, not all of them, but they need to be there to be used. The goal is that there's money remaining of the contingency. And that would be our goal, to be able to minimize the use of the contingency, but I want you to know that it's there, all right? So out of the $84,906, $2.5 million of that is contingency dollars. So the committed dollars that we're looking at would be the $82,400,000. So the reason that I'm going to explain that to you is there's a strategy of how we would use the contingency at the end of the project, and I'll explain that as I get into the next sheet. The green areas are ones that are to be bid. Watoma EMS and EOC are both scheduled to hit the street the end of August, and then we would get bids sometime in September for those two projects. So the numbers then would become yellow. They'd be hard numbers. And the evidence garage and the building and grounds and the annex, we haven't set dates for those designs. They would follow after we would get those other two projects completed, was the intended purpose there. The annex, there are no documents that would be created. It's an earmarked number for demolition costs to take the buildings downtown here. If there is a solution or an opportunity to have someone acquire these properties, then that money would not need to be used, or it could be utilized for negotiating purposes, whatever you decided to do with it. So that's how we got to that front page. I want you to look at the highway shop down below. The highway shop in yellow at $22,556,000 is what we call the base bid. If you go to the last page of this packet, I printed out the floor plan. This is just a real high-level floor plan. When we started the highway shop design, we started with a program space of about 60,000 square feet. And how we got to that number was a replacement of the space that you currently have. And there was a dollar associated to that number for $16 million. When we started to dive into the space programming and schematic design, it was identified, obviously, that we needed additional square footage. And we brought this back to Building and Grounds. It was decided to do this with alternate ads. So we would have a base bid number, which would be the area that you see that's in the colored green, the yellow and the two greens. Those elements would be the base bid number, okay? The alternate number one would be the vehicle garage that is that lighter yellow or kind of a tan color on top. And alternate two is one of these additional repair bays. So one of those additional repair bays would be added for alternate number two. So if you go back to the front page, when you see the 22,246, or 556, that's only getting that base bid. And it's about a 73,000 square foot building. And then you can see from the other additional space, we would be adding almost 32,000 square feet to the vehicle garage, and the repair shop would be adding another 2,500 square feet. So it's a substantial increase in the size of the project. And that's what that $4.6 million is off on the right-hand side of the sheet. That's if you do both of those alternates, okay? So at the end of the day, the cost of the highway shop with a $1 million contingency is just over $27 million. That's all in. Okay. And when I say project cost, that's total project cost. That's construction bids, that's professional fees, that's FF&E, which is fixtures, furnishings, and equipment, and the contingency. Okay. So that's the numbers that we have in here on your first page. Questions on the first page?
The additional borrowing, 27 million, does that include all the add-ons?
Yes. Yes. At the bottom there, that's a great question, Pat. Down at the bottom, I put the total in there at 89,506,000. That's if you do everything that's in the master plan with the add alternates from the highway shop. It's just under $90 million. Obviously, we've got 63 million allocated. It'd be 27 million additional that would have the contingency included in it. Okay. Yeah.
Last time you were here when this all started, 63 million. Now it's went up near a third.
Mhm.
What guarantee have we got that in 6 months you say, oh my gosh, it's just with the employment, with the materials, it's another 20, 30 million. What guarantee do you have that
Great
this
question.
will be the final number, period?
That is a great question. So here's what I can tell you, and the reason that I wanted to identify the dates that are there is we've got hard numbers for the biggest components of this project, right? So if you look at the numbers that are in here, where we have 51, 27 million, and another $2.3 million, okay? So a biggest chunk of this piece has been hard bid. We have contracts that they are bound to commit to as long as we make a decision within 45 days of July 7th for Poisippi and 45 days for the highway shop. The government center has already committed value. Those numbers are already fixed. The only reason that those numbers would go up is if we change scope. The contingency is used for design coordination issues, unforeseen items. That's what the contingency is to be used. So the exposure that we have of potential increases in the market would be from the Wautoma EMS, the EOC, the evidence garage, building and grounds, and the demo, which in my mind, that's a component that's tied, that's not going to fluctuate, right? So collectively, it's about $7 million that we have yet for exposure. Okay. We have contingencies tied into that. The Wautoma EMS, I feel very comfortable with that number because it is almost a case for case of square footage of scope of where Poisippi is, right? The wild card would be the EOC. And I feel that that number I have inflated to the point where we're comfortable with it. I'll get into the roof discussion because I know that's a topic I want to get into. The sheriff's evidence garage, that is one of those elements where we have to design to that space. So I understand your concern. I take full accountability for the 63 million. I gave you that number. Markets have went beyond what I ever would have expected. And that's not an excuse. That's just the position of what happened.
Taxpayers' tax payments are going to go beyond what they expect too.
Yep. No, I understand that. And I want you to know that's why I'm here before you tonight. I know how serious of a decision this is. And that's why we're talking about it tonight. It gives you some time to talk to your constituents and come back with more questions, and we can talk about it before you make that vote. And I hope you let all of your constituents know that we take this seriously. This is not light business. We understand what's at stake here. So understand the position. Other questions on the first page? Okay, second page. So my approach to the second page is to give you some options. Like Mr. Waddle has said, tax numbers are going to go up if we borrow. So the first option that I have of option number one was to come up with an approach that would get us as close to the $63 million as possible so that we don't have to borrow any more money. And what scope would we have to cut out? Okay. So the items that are in blue would be the ones that you could accomplish. The item that is in yellow are the ones that you wouldn't accomplish. And essentially, in that option, you're not building the highway shop. Now, the $2.5 million that you see in yellow is already a committed cost because we've already got it designed. We have design costs, we have soil borings, we have surveys that are done. There is a committed cost of that $2.5 million that is already committed, it's already spent, okay? Now, it's not wasted dollars. If you decided to bid that later, you still have those documents that 6 months, a year from now, if you wanted to rebid that project, those documents could be put on the street to bid, okay? Whatever decision you decided to make. That number gets you to $64,850,000, okay? Now, that still has contingencies in there, right? But it gets you close to the 63. It's not under. You want to get under the 63, we have to collectively pick which one of them are we going to take out. To put it very, very plainly, this option is whacking a highway out of it. We're not doing a highway shop. And that's a big component to decide, is that a priority or is it not? Okay. If you look down below, option number one shows that we're going to borrow $1.8 million. Now understand that our contingency for that is going to be slightly under that $1.8 million. So there is a potential that if we do well with the contingency, we may be able to take that additional borrowing and then pay down on the debt if there's contingency left, if that is your strategy to do so. I'm not making recommendations here. I'm giving you options. So something for you to consider in regards to how do we put these together. Option number two, this option identifies that everything in blue would get done. The items that are not existent there wouldn't get done. And the item that is in yellow would be the design fees and the costs associated with the EOC project, because we're close to finishing that design. And that's what is already committed cost for the EOC. But in option number two, the EOC does not get built. The sheriff's evidence garage does not get built. And the building and grounds project does not get built. The highway shop gets built with all of the alternates. Everything is there. The base bid, alternate one, and alternate number two. And that totals just under 84 million, 83,881. And again, those numbers still have the contingency in there. Option number three, everything in blue gets done. So in this option, we do the EOC. We still don't do the evidence garage. We still don't do the building and grounds. The highway shop under this option only gets the base bid. So we're not adding the two alternates. We're not adding that garage portion to the north, and we're not adding the repair bay that would be in that bank of repair bays. That number gets us to just under 83 million. So you can see in option number two, the borrowing would be just over 20 million. Option number three, the borrowing would be just under 20 million. And you may ask, why did you pick those? Because I've been talking to you about being over about 20 million. So that's why I brought it to you. I'm not saying do it or not do it, but it gives you an idea of what the borrowing would be. You as a board could leave here tonight and come back with a completely different scenario and pick and choose which ones are a priority. I'm going to tell you that it's difficult to prioritize because department heads are going to see that someone else took a step in front of them and they obviously have a need. The master plan didn't change in regards to the needs that you guys have here. It was really just the market and how things have increased. Now we have had some scope creep in some of these areas, and I want you to understand what's happened over the course of this design. We were at a part in the government center where we carved out almost $2 million at the level of DD. We made significant changes in regards to some of the finishes. We made significant changes in square footages that were changed in regards to the lower level. There were efforts that were made to keep that down, and Highway did the exact same thing. Highway made some significant changes because when we got to the end of, I don't remember if it was SD or DD, we identified that we were trending over budget, And Brian made some significant changes. He has a very efficient design on that highway shop. So one of the things that was asked at Building and Grounds was, can you do VE? What we did at Government Center is we had bids that came in that exceeded $53 million. We've been able to find savings with some value engineering items of talking to contractors about different materials without compromising quality. Melissa's done a great job with the staff of finding savings in the furniture side. And you can see that that number is around $51 million. So it's about $2 million saved. So the question at Building and Grounds is, can you do the same thing with Highway and Poisippi? We definitely will. I just don't want everybody to think that there's a big number, because there's been some efforts to cut some scope out of them already, but we will definitely exhaust all efforts to find savings in there if we can. Okay. So that's kind of a summary in regards to options. I mean, one of the things that you could look at in regards to how do you approach these, and you know, Jeff's going to talk about timing. The thing about the bids right now, and I've had counties ask me this, if we would just wait and bid it in spring, how much money are we going to save? If I knew that answer, it'd be wonderful. You don't know. No one knows. What you have right now is you have contractors that have a committed bid that they have to honor. And Jeff's going to talk to you about interest rates of when you borrow, and those decisions kind of come together, right? And the moment that you don't make that decision, there's variables that start to float in. And what does that look like? And I know people are making projections or you know, assumptions of what happens with the economy. The fact of the matter is we don't know. And I understand that you have constituents that say, hey, everything's costing more, stop spending. I get that. I hear that message. It's a matter of weighing what does that look like in regards to borrowing to meet the needs. So questions for me before we have Jeff give you information.
I noticed in our packet, it addresses that we would award the highway bid. If we award it, does that mean we can be?
No,
Not-
you mean for tonight?
Yes.
Yeah, we just had that on there. I had asked Megan to put it on there in case we would have the opportunity to move forward with that. Right now, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would table those just like we did at Building and Grounds until we come back in August. So the reason I keep stressing August is we've got dates in August that we lose those bids. That's why the next 30 days are very important, that if you want to move forward with them, we need to take action on them. You know, Poisippi, under the guides of the scope and the budget, Poisippi, you could effectively have Building and Grounds meet again before August, and we could approve that project. We thought it was best to bring it here without approving anything and get the take from the board of, does that make sense, right? In my mind, because it was a priority with Government Center, Poisippi, and Watoma EMS, to me, those are givens. You guys may have a different position on that. That's not my decision to make. But to Pat's point, the reason that they're there is we do need to take action. So whatever 45 days is from July 7th, that's Poisippi's deadline. Whatever 45 days is from July 12th, that's the highway's deadline. So you get an idea of what that needs to be committed to.
The other thing to keep in mind here is we're bonded right now for 63 million. If we would approve like the highway, that would be over that. So I don't know how we could even do that without being
Correct. Yeah,
bonded. So
highway, you couldn't, in my opinion, you can't take action.
you wouldn't
on
want to until.
that. Poisippi, you could.
Mhm. So
Other questions? I know I'm throwing a lot at you. And again, if after the meeting, I was hoping we could generate some discussion, unless you're all just in shock. If to be able to address questions that you have.
you had said you were going to say something about the EOC roof. Are you going to do that now?
Oh, yeah.
or when-
Yep. So I don't mind if you, I hope you don't mind if I share, but at Building and Grounds, Dave had a prepared speech about the decision or the discussion that we had last month about the EOC's roof and the $750,000 for aesthetic purposes. And I want to be the first to say, if I didn't communicate it accurately, that the 750 isn't all aesthetics. There's some mechanical infrastructure that's in there, but there is a portion of it that is aesthetics. And we had an EOC meeting this morning, and I shared it with the group that is a very important topic. We wouldn't want a roof to derail a project or derail a master plan, right? So when I got you guys, it wasn't even on the agenda. I kind of got your blessing last month with, yeah, that looks good. Let's put it in there. And you guys didn't know all of this, right? You didn't realize that we were $27 million over. And it was more of a snapshot of what looks better. And then I talked about performance. The standing seam roof is going to outlast a flat roof, right? But there's a cost to that. The mechanical that we have in one option is a rooftop packaged unit versus an air handling component that would feed off of the chillers. Life cycles of those are about double. You know, the one is about double of what the packaged unit would be. So in 15 years, to replace the one that's on the rooftop, you're probably going to look to invest another $50,000 to $60,000 that you wouldn't on this one, right? The roof component, we're looking at 20 to 25 year life cycle that you would have to replace that roof versus the standing seam would still stand there, right? So there is an element of aesthetics that is in there, but there is also performance. But I also think it's one of those areas that if we said, hey, we're going to make that decision and we have to look at a flat roof or we're not going to be able to build that portion of the building, I think that's something that we definitely entertain and say, does that make sense to stick that money elsewhere? So I wouldn't want that. And if I caused confusion at the last meeting, I apologize by not defining what that scope was. But it wasn't all aesthetics. But I do understand, Dave, the position that you have, and I understand the constituents looking at that.
Does anybody else have any questions for Kurt? Anything at all? It's a good time to bring it out because
They know Jeff's is more important.
just waiting for Jeff, I guess. So thank you, Kurt.
Yep.
Okay. And we have Jeff Belangio from Huntington.
I kind of know how Saddam Hussein felt with that shock and awe campaign that they leveled on him. Wow. Well, first of all, let me thank you for the opportunity. I had the pleasure of meeting with the executive committee and some additional board members last week. I thought we had a fairly good meeting in terms of where we came from and I think where we possibly can go. I wanted to present the rest or that information to the rest of the county board so that we're all on the same page, because when you hear these numbers, unless you can equate them into something we can individually handle, you are in a little bit of shock and awe. Certainly I would be. When someone says, you know, you get 63 million, I normally look to my checkbook and I can't find that in there. And thank goodness I don't have to pay for it all myself. And as you guys know, we don't either. This is a community of a little over 3 billion in equalized value. That's a pretty significant number. I'm awed by that number, quite frankly. But that 3 billion helps us to generate income to operate and maintain county and its services, and in this case, to provide facilities to the people in the community and to improve those facilities. But we also, prior to making a decision, want to know what the heck that's going to mean out of my pocketbook. And so back when we started the program and we determined a number to be 63 million, I was put in charge of determining, hey, just what the heck is that going to cost us for an individual property owner? So we ran a schedule that looked something like this 63 million. This isn't exactly the one I ran. This one was an update that I did in March after the interest rates changed. When I ran the one a year prior, I had assumed interest rates of about where we are now, just to give myself some cushion. Thanks, Megan. I appreciate that. And short notice of me handing those to you at 4 o'clock, and I appreciate you being able to get them on board here for. So when we ran the original one, we said that the total would be about 94 cents a thousand. You're looking at about 98 cents there, but that does not take into account that this schedule does not show that on June 1st, we actually paid off $2 million of that first 17 we borrowed. So 2 million of that's already been paid back. When you think of that, if we'd have borrowed the 63 million all at one time, that 2 million would be sitting out in 2047. And you'd have been paying interest on it that whole time period. So the idea was obviously to borrow money in which we could invest at a time and pay over a reasonable period of time, plus meet the IRS pay down requirements. IRS on a project like this, since we're borrowing tax exempt and they're not getting income from the holders of these bonds, says that you need to spend 10% in the first 6 months. You need to spend 45% in the first 18 months. So what I had to do in order to determine what that borrowing amount was, the 17 million I came up with, was to look at Kurt's construction draw schedule and what he anticipated in terms of your needs. And that's really what had motivated me to this plan of finance. Okay. But that's a good question. And I know people had it. Why don't we do all the 63 all at once? Well, because you'd have been paying that 3,307,500 in interest in that first column. There's no way we would have paid any principal because we only paid 2.9 million this year in debt service. 2 million of which was principal. I'd much rather have my clients pay principal than interest. Okay, so there is a method to my madness. I just didn't see this market moving away as it has. But so anyway, you can still see from the far right mill levy column, I'm pretty confident that right now, barring the world blowing up and things getting appreciably worse, that we're going to get you in on the 63 million at something under $1 per thousand of fair market value. Okay. We're not exactly at the 94 cents, but I went through the tax levy with Sarah and with Melissa for 2023. So when you're coming into this year's budget, right now, based on the equalized value, you're at about 98 cents per thousand. I will tell you, good news today. On the way here, I called back to the office, talked to one of my analysts. I said, get on the Department of Revenue's website, take a look at Wautoma and see what their TIF districts look like. She calls me back in a hurry and says, you're a lucky guesser. They got a little over $30 million TID that has to be truncated, finished, completed by the 28th of August of this year. So your new valuation coming out this October will show a plus increase of a little over $30 million just from that happening. Okay. That's a big plus, more so in terms of your operational levy. Because when you look at your levy of last year of about $6.88 per thousand on 30 million, we'll round it to 7 to make it easy, that's $210,000 of income that TID was getting that you're now going to get. Okay. Everyone understand that?
Mm.
Okay. So when I looked at this, I used an equalized value, and this happens to be an assessed value. Don't ask me why that program is set up that way, but more people use assessed than equalized, but counties use equalized, so we use it interchangeably. I used a 2% growth factor in that column. All right. Last year you grew by 6 point some percent. The year before 5 point some percent. My guess is this year when it gets certified sometime in October, or we get the preliminary value in August, should get the preliminary value in August before your next meeting. Okay. Think about that. So I'll be able to give you even more of an update in terms of what that impact is. We should get not a surprise. I mean, I think you're going to have another 5+% increase in valuation. That's perfect. That's great. We want that. Okay. But that's kind of a snapshot, a review of the snapshot in history of the schedule I had to run to say to the original committee, 94 cents a thousand. Recognize a lot of you were there. Remember that. Yeah, it wasn't about, remember we had debt service in existence of 48 cents. We were adding another roughly 40 cents per thousand to do this. And that's where we come in with the 90 some cents. Okay. And that's where we were last year. I think we were at just under 89 cents per thousand, I think was our levy for debt service, which we were paying, and we paid most of it already June 1st. You'll have an semi-annual interest payment on December 1st. Everyone understand that? Give questions before we move on to the next one. All right, you see that 406 there, that's our last remaining debt service on a 2011 issue we did. I think that was for towers and communications and stuff, if I recall, right? Yeah, okay. My memories still are a little bit, thank goodness. Megan, would you be so kind? Okay. Now, you'll see other debt service now. That's our 17 million there. Both P and I were under 16. We've already paid 2 million of principal off on that issue. And I said, okay, we need to borrow 46 million more. 17 and 46, 63. So because interest rates changed, I plugged in the 46, assuming we would borrow it all at one time. It pushed it down. So in order for me to get a level mill impact, I had to delay principal payment until 2032. Right? Well, we actually didn't do that, but at least this gives me my worst case scenario as to where I need to be to produce for you a level mill impact. Look what's happened to our mill impact on the longer end. We're down at 92, and 32, we're at 80 some cents. That's on a 2% growth. I did not change my assumption in terms of the assessed value growth. Okay. Now, the years where you see certainly $1.15, that's not going to be. I just told you right now, it's 98 cents. But the reason it's showing that is it assumed we did that 32 million all at once, and I'm paying all that interest in that first year. That's not happening. What I really need to look at is in the future, where we're going to be and what I need to do to make sure we can try to get your 63 million still in under a dollar per thousand. Okay. I still feel confident we can do that. Have a little trust, please. I will try to not let you down, assuming somebody else in the government above us doesn't do something stupid again. But anyway, that's another point. Sorry, I apologize. But in any case, there's where we think we're gonna go. Now, I think you all can recognize that if we grow by more than 2%, you're not gonna hit those 86 cents numbers. They're gonna be obviously something less than that. I'll get another chance to show you based on a new valuation this year in the next month as to what those numbers look like. But again, I'm pretty comfortable we're still okay with the 63 million. So I know it's not great news that projects have escalated in terms of costs and gas has more than doubled and all that stuff we didn't expect, but I'm still happy to say we're okay. No need to jump out any windows, at least at this particular point. Now, Kurt was very good at scaring me. Shock and awe again. He's good at that, I must say. Called me up and gave me a 27. No, I said, 27 what? He said, no, I think it's gonna be 27 million. I said, oh, okay. Well, at the exec committee meeting last week, in preparation, I ran a $10 million schedule because, hey, guess what? That's easy to divide by one. And it basically said, and I told the exec committee, Mark can attest to that, I don't think he'll lie, but I said for every million, it's about 2 cents. Okay. So being kind of a doubting Thomas and myself, I thought, oh, Jeff, did you make a mistake and move a decimal point? Is it really 2 cents? And you go back. And so I ran a $27 million schedule this morning before I went, and the impact is and Kurt said to me, well, okay, 27 times 2, that's 54 cents. He's pretty quick for an engineer guy. And I said, yeah, okay. And then I thought, well, you better make darn sure that's true. So I ran the 27 million. It's right now closer to 50 cents. So it's under the 2 cents. And we said, and again, said, let's use 2 cents. I think I used 1.7 or 1.8. Let's use 2 cents. So if in fact, and like Kurt said, I'm not telling you you should borrow any more money. I'm just telling you, if you decide to, that's the impact. So when it all is said and done, if we put another 27 million on in the next year or so, you're going to be at something under $1.50 total. Okay. But again, it's not asking you to make a decision, just giving you information to ruminate, chew our cud, if you will, on the new information and what you have here to digest. And certainly wanted to answer any questions that you might have. Was that as informative, Mark, as last week? Is helpful? Thank you. Appreciate it.
So you all understand where we are and where we'd need to be if we completed the whole project, just so you're comfortable to take it to your constituents to ask him some questions. I guess that's what my goal is for tonight.
And you can still obviously use that 2 cents per million of new money. I'm confident it works. I was pretty confident last week, but over the weekend, I thought, I better run that just to make sure. And it still works out. There's a relationship to numbers. Huh, who'd have thought?
The easiest way that I've seen it before is the 50 cents that Jeff is referring to. It would end up being $1 a week on a $100,000 evaluation. Fair?
It would be $55, right? $50 on $100,000. $50. Correct. Or for those of you who own $1 million property, it'd be 500.
Yeah,
That's easier for people to
when you say
understand.
$1 a week,
That's easier for the people to understand. what you-
Yeah, it usually is, Mark, you're right. It's like I tried to start out and
It would
didn't finish.
$1.40.
When somebody
He's
says
already-
63 million, I go, holy man, it overwhelms me. I am in shock.
The addition.
But then when I look at the
Mhm.
fact that we've got a $3 billion
50 cents.
corporation you guys are running, and that helps us all, now it becomes a bit more manageable. And really, and I'm, again, not telling you ever would tell any of my clients what to do or to borrow money. But when you look at providing $90 million worth of facilities that are obviously going to be used well into the future, and to say, okay, at least right now in today's dollars, it was $1.50. Sometime 10 years from now, it's going to be maybe under $1. And 20 years from now, it's probably going to be under that, just due to the fact that, right, and again, keep in mind, again, I'll go back to the assumption, and the gentleman in the back, sir, I apologize. I can't see. Pat?
Pat?
You had a great question. When we were talking about that, you said, Jeff, valuations could go down. And he brought up a good point, because 2008, when the real estate market crashed, for a period of time, people did get a depression in their, it went flat or they dropped a percentage or two. But so you're absolutely correct, Pat. That happened. I like the fact that we're going to get $30 million right away in terms of real value that's out there. That's going to be true. But again, if we have, and I started with 2% for next year, if we have a 5 or 6%, you can understand the fact that now my 2% doesn't mean so much, because we're ahead of the game, if you will. If we get a 6, if we get a next couple of years like the last two, then I'm really going to look like a hero there in terms of those numbers. So
The 2% growth is a pretty conservative based on our history. So
yeah, based on the last 2 years, and when even though of course we've been impacted significantly, there's projects, and I think Mark, I don't know if Mark educated me. He's a builder involved in real estate and homes and stuff, so he got a pretty good idea. There's still a lot of stuff happening out there. I've got friends in the private sector who are plumber contractors and stuff like that, and they're still telling me they're amazed at the starts that they got and how it's continuing to move. So I don't know how long that'll last, but certainly going to last. That value is there.
Mhm.
Just needs to get on our books.
sure.
what information would you like Jeff or I to tailor for next month's meeting coming out of tonight? And if there are things that come up, obviously before then, let us know. We can bring them prepared. Are the things that we haven't been able to provide you data on that you would like us to bring for the next meeting?
You can always relay that to Melissa. We've had a wonderful opportunity to review some of this today, and
Mhm.
just a phone call away or an email away. So whatever you guys might need, don't hesitate to ask. It helps.
Just for clarification, currently roughly 48 cents is already part of what we have borrowed. So the effect of $1.48, if we borrowed everything, the additional 27 million is actually another dollar.
No, 50 cents, because Patrick, what we did was in 2022, our payments, there's 90 cents in your last year's budget for debt service. So if we went up another 50, basically you get 60 cents that is not there right now. Does that make sense? Our debt service right now, as of last year, is 90 some cents.
Total project borrowing, Pat, is just under $1, if you look at it that way, because you were at 48.
Right.
And he's telling you that you're going to be at under $1.50. So your total borrowing to do all of the project would be $100 a year for $100,000 evaluation.
Yes,
Or $2 a week for those individuals. That would be a way to simplify.
Yes, but when you said $50, a little while.
$50 is for this borrowing.
Oh, just looking at that
Yeah,
27.
okay,
We're identifying the component part of, get what you're saying. You want the total, that 50 cents is part of your,
impact on the people that pay taxes is how much is that gonna be? Is it gonna be $100 additional per thousand, per $100,000 home? Or is it gonna be $50? And that's the confusion. I don't want people to think that it's only gonna be,
Let's make it simple.
Okay.
The first decision was $50. If you make the decision to borrow 27 more, it's another $50 for a total of $100 for the whole project. That'd be the simplest way. It's gonna be 2 cents either way, but if you use a dollar, or that dollar or $100 for a $100,000 valuation, that would be the best way to go about it.
I get where you're going. I apologize.
right? I just, because there'll be misinformation and some people will say, oh, tell their constituents it's only gonna cost you $50 per 100,000.
Yeah.
We should really know what it's gonna cost us.
Correct.
So how does 63 million get you one number, but 27 million get you twice as much?
Again?
Am I seeing that right?
You said the 27 was gonna, or the 63 was gonna cost us 50 cents.
Because you already had,
27 is gonna cost us 50.
because you already had 48 cents in there on the previous debt service.
That
What we
doesn't
did is-
change. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but we didn't let that go away, the timing. Okay. So yeah, they're still gonna pay it. I agree with what you say. Patrick's right. I mean, it's still there, whether it was old debt or new debt. We're extending it. It's just that impact
That was already in there.
is almost, I don't know, did you get any real comments on last year's budget in terms of mill levy? Because I didn't hear anything. You guys would, but it was in there. I mean, there's 2.9, we went from up to 2.9 in total, a little over 2.9 in total debt service. So, but again, because part of it was already, more than half of it was in there. And it might have been such that 6% ate up a lot of that felt impact. I don't know.
Everett, did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
Just bringing it down in
Okay.
case I do.
right. You're getting ready to spring one on us. Okay.
Is there anything that we haven't covered or anything that confuses anyone? I don't want you to leave here with questions, but when you leave, you can reach out to either one of us. We can get your information.
And this is a lot of information. So as you look it over, you like Jeff said, either one of them, Melissa, you can ask me, I can pass stuff along to them. But I just want you to be informed so you can go, talk to your people. Dave has already done that, and I think that's effective to do that kind of stuff. So
I guess can I, on the first page, here where the
My
green,
first page?
yeah,
Yeah.
the green numbers or the ones that are highlighted in green,
Yep.
the $89 million
Yes,
is guesstimating that they're gonna fall in these numbers.
the green one's correct. I would say better than a guesstimate, but you're right. We don't have hard numbers for those yet.
Okay,
Correct.
so we might borrow more than 27. That's the point.
I think that was Robert's question. And, Again-
2.5 of that is contingency as well.
yeah, but again, the EMS, they're very similar and we just got numbers on them, right? So I'm comfortable with that. The EOC, I do believe that we've got some additional cushion in that one. And, the ones that I would say are variables are that sheriff's evidence in the building and grounds of what we do scope wise. So we really haven't hammered out the scope. I believe we're there. But I'm also looking at that as a smaller component that if we have contingency funds left over, it could allocate some of the overages that are there. So to be safe, I mean, if you think about the $7 million it's there, if it's something that we're worried about that and we want to add another million or two to the borrowing, I think that's something we consider. As crazy as that sounds, but you could then pay the debt down if there is a concern about not having enough contingency. You may tell me, Kurt, I'm not comfortable with 3% contingency. Let's go to 5. Doesn't mean that it's spent, but then at the end of the project, we can pay debt down on that, right? If the contingency was left. So that could be a way to look at it.
And all the numbers in the yellow are not to exceed numbers. Those are
Correct.
solid.
Those are fixed. Yep.
Yeah, because I think the 3% is low on contingency, but just because there's a whole lot of green there yet.
Sure.
Um,
There's a lot of green lines. It's not the same value as the other ones, but I understand the concern.
so
Get it.
the ones that are in green, you just kind of based on where the locked in bids came in based on what they were budgeted, you kind of increased them percentage wise.
Correct.
Okay.
We've been seeing, 30% increases on a lot of the projects, so we've seen those bumps. The EMSs are so similar in regards to construction type and where they're at. Feel comfortable with that one. So yeah, I understand the concern. It's a justifiable question. And if we wanted to be safer, we could bump the contingency to 5%.
Everybody comfortable with that then?
Yeah, I've just got one comment I want to make.
Sure.
I was on Buildings and Grounds when this was presented to us on Monday. So I started asking those questions to some of the citizens in my area. I just want to make a comment to all us board members. If everybody hasn't read this master plan, please do so. Cover to cover, word for word, because this was able for me to answer a lot of questions that people had for me so far. So,
Mhm.
I think that's a well put together document. It really tells the story of what we have today.
Mhm. That's right. Very good. All
Okay.
right.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in a month. And again, if you want information before then, don't hesitate to give me a shout. Okay.
Thank you
thanks.
both for the information. We really appreciate it. Yep. All right. We'll move into the county administrator's monthly report. Ms. Bingle?
I'll try to be brief. So we've been meeting with the building folks and having a lot of committee meetings and trying to pare down costs, and everyone, like Kurt said, has done a really good job of doing that. If anyone has any questions about the courthouse furnishings, please reach out. I have packets up here of all of it detailed in Pat. If you want to look at that, I brought that up here for you too. Financials, we are working on budget right now with the new Tyler system. It's been bumpy, but we're getting through it. So we're still on schedule, but just wanted to let you know that we have had some bumps in the road here with the Tyler transition. So we're going to push payroll back into probably the first payroll of 2023 to make sure we get any bugs out of payroll, which we're already starting to run parallels with those systems anyway. So that's where we are. As far as COLAs go, right now we did put in for a 2.5. And with the information that was shared about the increased valuation, that will hopefully be helpful for us to be able to keep up with the surrounding counties, because there's a lot of them doing 4% plus their steps. So we're going to be looking at that. We do have a couple departments that are very critically low staffed. One is in the jail. So I'm working with the sheriff on what we can possibly do, maybe shift differentials, because he's running as lean as he can there, and we need to be able to staff our jail appropriately. So we're working on that. And then public health, we're working on the nurse positions because the private sector just pays so much better than we are. So Patty's has lots of strategies she's working on, and we're working on that. But we do need to remain competitive with our partners. I know Adams County's doing 4% next year on top of their steps. With all this spending, we hope to get some economic development going, and we are going to meet in Green Lake next week, Monday. It's going to be Green Lake, Marquette, and Adams now has reached out to us to see if they could join forces as we start to collaborate on different ideas that we can work on for economic development with our communities, even if we don't actually pair or with all of them, at least we can get ideas from one another. And I did speak to Kiwanis and Rotary last week and shared that information and let them know if they have any ideas, that we're happy to listen, and if they have ideas to get them to me or John. And as far as the staffing goes, I may have to come back to the personnel or executive committee on if I do need to start changing some of the wages, because that is a budget impact. So just to keep that in mind. And then the last thing is we don't want to bring all of this stuff to our new building as far as our records. So we are actively working on our purging. We had the Historical Society here this week, and they went through and did some inventory, and then they will be coming back in September to take the records that they want to keep for historical purposes. And then we're going to have to do a capital project probably for purging them, because we will have to destroy them with shredders. And then, so shredding company will come. And then we're also getting quotes from companies on how they can scan or image, especially large things like in the surveyor's office, GIS and zoning, so we can maintain those records but not have maps like all over. And a lot of times that paper just starts to break down, and we lose the integrity of that. So that's all I have.
Anybody have any questions for Melissa? I have one. You had talked about, I think, health insurance last time. How, is there any movement on that, or have you gotten any?
We did a town hall yesterday, talking just about benefits, and solicited questions over the last month from employees on what they want to see, what questions they have. We are getting the state insurance priced out because I believe it's Green Lake and Marquette. We do have some employees that have come here and they had the state insurance there. It used to be out of range really because you had to buy into the state plan, but within the last 2 years, they've been doing more underwriting and the prices have come down. So we are getting that. And then we talked about high deductible plans, but as far as rates, no, I don't have those yet. We'll have
Okay.
those in August, September.
Okay, good.
And the town hall was very well, I think it was like 65 people attended, either in person or on. So that's the most we had attending. So we're doing that every month and picking a different topic, and benefits probably will be a topic until open enrollment, which will be in November.
Good. Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to the District Attorney's Office Annual Report with our District Attorney, Matthew Lusink.
Let you know when to go to the next slide. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Lusink. I am the district attorney. I've now been the DA since January of 2021. You can go ahead to the next slide. So when I was doing this report, I kind of noticed that if you were here last year for our report, there's going to be a lot of similarities. But this right now lists our office staff. We're currently hiring for an additional assistant district attorney position. The one I had in that position took a job that was a little bit shorter of a commute for him. He lived in the Fox Valley area. So that'll be a little bit of a drawn out process. It's kind of like that with all of the district attorney's offices in the state at this time when they have a vacancy that's taken a while to fill them. You can go ahead to the next page. So this kind of has a general summary of our office responsibilities. And the main thing is that we prosecute all criminal offenses that occur within Waushara County. It can be by police departments. Sometimes we will get a referral from a state agency like the Department of Corrections or the, I believe it's Agriculture, Consumer Trade and Protection. I think that's the name of the agency. And then sometimes it'll be our office's investigator who follows up on a complaint and he refers a charge as well. We will occasionally handle special prosecutions, and that'll occur when a DA's office in a county that's nearby, someone in their office has a conflict of interest, and so they need another county to handle that prosecution. That occasionally will happen on our end, although it doesn't happen that often. We also handle traffic and county ordinance violations. Our main ones that we get are from the Sheriff's Department and the State Patrol, but we also have some municipalities, especially on first offense OWIs, that our office handles the prosecution. And then with law enforcement, I'll frequently get phone calls from law enforcement with questions on investigations that they're doing. So we do talk to them as well. And we will help out with search warrant subpoenas, that, and then we also participate in our county's treatment court program. Go ahead. So to talk about some of our overall trends that we had last year, when I made this presentation, I noted that we had slowed down quite a bit in 2020. It was a combination of the pandemic and the fact that for all intents and purposes, we didn't have a district attorney for the calendar year of 2020, and we were short prosecutors in that office. So 2021, it did pick up. It was a bit busier than 2020. And then 2022 has been similar. In the number of cases that's been filed, it's a similar number. At this point last year, and I was able to look because I gave my presentation at the same time, our felony cases that we had filed were slightly up, and then misdemeanors were about the same. One thing we have, though, and I'll talk about this more on a later slide, is that we've had more jury trials so far this year than at this point last year. And then there's a continued methamphetamine presence in the county. That seems to be the really serious drug that a lot of people are using. So this kind of gives you an overview of the total criminal cases that were filed in the circuit court. And that includes criminal felony cases, criminal misdemeanor cases, and then criminal traffic cases. And that's just a variant of misdemeanor cases. So if you look back in 2018, that was basically the high water mark in terms of criminal cases being filed. And then 2019, it went back down to earth at 716. 2020, as I noted previously, there was a big drop there. And then when we look at 2021, it was getting very close, a little bit short, but still close to what it was in 2019. And if you look at 2022 to date, noting that we're, in the 7th month of the year, it's on roughly that same pace, maybe a little bit more than at this point last year. Go ahead. So this is on our felony case files, which tend to be the more complicated cases. And you look, again, there was that high mark in 2018 at 276. It only dropped slightly in 2019. And even the drop in 2018, it was not that significant. So the drop in cases in 2019 and 2020, they were mainly due to less misdemeanor cases getting filed. But as you can see, the number of felony cases filed didn't drop that much. And actually in 2021, we actually were slightly above the 2019 total. And then if you look at 2022 to date, it's similar. I think we have filed a few more felonies than at this point last year. And then this is a comparison. Back in 2000, only 97 felony cases were filed. So you can tell in the last 20 years that there's been a real uptick in felony level cases being charged out. So one of the things that's been prevalent has been methamphetamine cases. It's that and marijuana that are the main drugs that I'm seeing cases charged out with. And so far we've had 25 methamphetamine cases that have been filed this year. That's down by about 4 from where we were last year. One thing that's been up, though, is that we've managed to catch and charge several people for dealing methamphetamine. So we're hoping that that's going to make an effect in the future by hopefully taking some of those dealers out of commission. There have been 73 marijuana cases that have been filed this year. That's up from at this point last year. And that's not really surprising. I don't see that marijuana changing at any time soon. That's a drug that people use. Now, I would note there are quite a few of those that overlap where someone was caught with both marijuana and methamphetamine. Obviously, it's up to the legislature whether or not marijuana is going to remain illegal or not. I will say this, it's up to them, but if that happens, there's going to be a lot of consequences that are unforeseen. You're going to have more people driving under the influence of marijuana. You're going to have the potential for more addiction-related issues, and I've seen in my experience as a prosecutor that a lot of people with more serious drug offenses started off with marijuana charges in their record. And it's also going to hinder enforcement of more serious drug offenses because, as I told you, a lot of people that have marijuana on them also will have more serious drugs with them. And marijuana is a drug that gives off an odor. And a lot of times, the reason law enforcement is able to find some of these more serious drugs is because they can smell the marijuana, and that gives them the ability to conduct a search of a vehicle in order to find that. There's a little bit of cocaine, not a lot, and then little to no heroin cases so far. Now, there's a likelihood that that may change in a few years, and it's pretty frequent that there's a drug, a serious drug like methamphetamine, cocaine, or heroin that's in at the time. It's the drug that people are using more. It could be in 5 years that there aren't as many methamphetamine cases, but we have an uptick in heroin, and that's just a trend that you'll see across the state. Go ahead. So in looking at impaired driving cases, we had 169 that went through our office in 2021, a little bit more than 2020. We've had 91 so far this year. I will note that we have a OWI homicide case that is pending from June. It's, I think, the first one that our office has charged out in a while. We had some other traffic homicides, but they weren't impairment related. And that's just a little disclaimer I have to put on there that he is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Go ahead. And then an issue that's becoming bigger are drug driving cases. So we had an uptick in that. There were 16 that we filed involving a restricted controlled substance in 2021, and that's a little bit higher than it was the year before. We have one so far that's been referred, but there's a big but to that. There is a serious backlog with the testing of blood for the presence of controlled substances at the hygiene lab. It's now taking about a year after the arrest for the results of the drug screen to come back. And that's the worst I've seen it in my time as a prosecutor. It used to be nowhere near this bad. And I think when I was doing the presentation last year, I think I said it was about a 6-month backlog. So it's gotten worse over the last year. And as I noted, we had 5 referrals that had come in at this point last year. So a lot more came in the last part of 2021. And then that doesn't mention cases involving prescription drugs because restricted controlled substance is a certain category of drugs, but there's other drugs that people can have in their system as well. Go ahead. So jury trials is the one thing that's been really busy this year. So our office handled 10 total in 2021. I did 8 of those jury trials, and then my assistant did 2 of them. There was an additional one that the Department of Justice handled. Our office had no part in that case. It was initiated by DOJ, and we never touched it. At this point already, we've already had 10. And as kind of the details in that are noted, 8 of them were felony trials. There was 1 misdemeanor and then 1 traffic case that we had in May. And then we've got a lot that are set for the rest of the year. And we started doing this last year, but we've been stacking cases, which means that we have more than 1 set on a day for trial, which means obviously you can't do 2 trials in the same day. So if they don't wind up coming to a resolution, one of them is going to get bumped and set for a later date. So that's something that we kind of have to be mindful of because it has the potential to make, cases have huge backlogs, and we don't want that. So some of the notable trials that we've had, January, we had a delivery of amphetamine case, and I believe the drug in question was Adderall, and then a 6 offense OWI related case. And that particular case, that individual had methamphetamine in his system. And then in March, I had a first-degree child sexual assault jury trial as well. These are trials, I would note, that ended in convictions. The child sexual assault case is pending sometime in the fall. So just things for the future, and this is actually very similar to a slide I had last year. The building project's coming up, so we're anticipating, moving into space there. Obviously, our part in the planning is done there in terms of the design. And then the second judge is taking office next month. We have an idea as to how Judge Blader and Judge Dutcher are going to handle the case assignments and how their courts will operate. And we kind of, after following up with DA's offices in other parts of the state that have had to deal with adding an additional judge, particularly counties that went from one judge to two judges. We do have a general idea how we will handle things. It may be a little different while we're only at 2 attorneys, but hopefully that'll be addressed soon. I do think that the two people that are judges in Waushara County, they're flexible and going to be reasonable with the DA's office on how to handle the schedule, which from what I've heard with DA's offices in other states doesn't always happen. So I'm grateful for that. So that is my general presentation. I can answer any questions that any of you might have.
Does anybody have any questions for Matt? Very good. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, then we'll move into item B, discussion possible motion action items. Number 1 is bids and recommendations of award for Poistipi EMS in the Senior Dining Center. Now, this can be acted on, or like I said before, we can table these until next month and give you some time to think about them. So it's up to you. This particular one, we do have bonding for, but so I guess is there a motion one way or another? Everett?
Move we act on it.
You want to act on it? Okay. So is your motion to award the Poistipi EMS?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second on that? A second by Mr. Peterson. Okay. And then is there a discussion? Okay. So just so we're clear, what we're going to be voting on here, we're going to say that we're accepting the bid as it stands right now. And that's, Kurt, there was a change to that bid from before. And I don't know how that was in the.
So I know that, I think Megan shared those summaries with you in your packet. So the number that we had in here of 2,347,000, that includes the FF&E, the contingency. There was a line item with Egbert at the excavator. Their bid amount was over $600,000, but as we identified the scope that was in their bid, there was duplications of scope, and we were able to have them reduce their bid amount down to 280. So the number that is in here is the contract amount that we would then issue to Egbert, not what was on their bid document. So just to clarify that there would be a difference there.
Okay.
So,
And that's reflected in that number that we have.
correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. So the number is 2.350 million. All right. So if there's any other discussion,
Yes, John, really, EMS, everybody would agree, building a Poistipi and the court house were definitely on the project. I mean, they definitely 1 and 2.
right? Okay. Yep. Any other discussion? Okay. Well, let's proceed to vote.
Mine's dead.
Yours is dead. Everett, do you know? Okay, the motion carries. Very good. All right, and number 2 then, bids and recommendations of award for the highway shop.
Motion we table.
All right, there's been a motion to table. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Urban. All right, is there discussion? I guess we don't discuss tabling, do we? All right, we can proceed to vote. This is to a vote to table. Okay, and the motion carries to table that until further, another meeting. All right, very good. Now we move into C, consideration, possible action on the following resolution. Resolution number 32-07-22, related to the PSAP grant funding for one public safety answering point per county. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you by Mr. Priyasky. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Cap. Is there discussion? Anybody want an explanation? You read it? All right, pretty straightforward. All right, proceed to vote. Okay, the motion carries. All right, move into part D, the appointments. Number one is Human Services Board, Mike McClay from Coloma, term July 19th, 2022, to July 19th, 2025. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Waddle, second by Mr. Urban. All right, is there any discussion? Okay, proceed to vote.
Yes.
Okay, and the motion carries. All right, the proclamation recognizing August 2022 as Child Support Awareness Month. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Eckstein, second by Mr. Bossard. Is there any discussion? All right, let's proceed to vote. All right, and the proclamation carries. All right, so we're up to number 9, board suggestions for future agenda items. Is there anything anybody would like to see in a future agenda item? All right, our next meeting is August 16th, 2022 at 6 PM. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn by Mr. Eckstein, second by Mr. Cap. We are adjourned. Thank you. How long am I looking?
Hey, Bart, I got to follow up with you.
That's okay. I'll be careful.
I don't have one.
Hey, Eugene.
Yeah, if you're cool
Sure.
with that, that'd be great.
Okay, it's working.
Memorize.
Better.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, yeah, yeah. If
Oh,
it completely falls apart, I'll let you. Should get it.
Well, missing a couple more pieces.
I know.
Sounds goes in there.
Okay.
Exactly, no, I'm safe.
I think you had a
All right,
good
thank
idea.
My own stupidity, so.
Yeah.
Maintain it or.
Yeah,
fix it
that's
up
where I'm
or-
at too, is
I still-
I
not
mean,
being involved on
They're
the,
there, those office
It's like-
buildings, service.
it's not sure where things are supposed to be.
This one, the jail part, that's not that
All right,
old. That
thank
could be
you.
renovated very easily. I mean, or put a wall, a fire